Hey there, and welcome back to the Faithful Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Alex Van Houten, and I'm super excited about today's episode. Big question, what if your healing was meant to begin on a hiking trail and not in a therapist's office? That's what I'm going to be talking about today with our guest, Jennifer Neufeld, the founder of Fresh Journey. Stick around. We're going to be talking about tools that you can use in your life and in the lives of your loved ones. The core method for processing pain, trauma, and grief with honesty and hope. And we're going to be talking about the neuroscience of loss. You're not going to want to miss this. Also, if you haven't picked up your copy of the Faithful Fitness Devotional, you need to go to betterdaily.live/devo and pick up your pre-signed copy today. We're going to have an awesome launch party when the book comes out, and I want you to be a part of it. That's betterdaily.live/devo. Let's get into it. 1, 2, 3, 4. What's up, guys? This is Coach Alex Van Houten on the Faithful Fitness Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited about this conversation. Actually, maybe more strangely excited than I should be in a conversation about grief and processing grief with Miss Jennifer Neufeld. Jennifer, how are you today?
Good.
Awesome.
Nice to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. We are 2 hours different, so I've had a bit more coffee than you have thus far. So
Yes.
to the listeners, if I'm overwhelmingly energetic, it's not because Jennifer's not. It's because she needs 2 more hours of coffee and maybe a good hike under her belt. So I want to dive right into this conversation. You are working with individuals to help them overcome grief in a very unique way, and maybe not overcome, maybe walk through. I think that's something we can talk about here today. I want to start by asking you how your enterprise, Fresh Journey, started. What was kind of the place that it began, and what are you guys doing in the world right now?
All right. Well, so Fresh Journey actually started right before the pandemic. And after I had completed walking through my own seasons of grief for about 9-10 years. So I had done a lot of work, a lot of group work, a lot of my own counseling to work through difficult seasons in marriage with children. Obviously we all come with our own baggage from growing up, and all of those things to kind of work through. And just as the pandemic was starting, I had already had the idea going that Fresh Journey, which is freedom, rest, and encouragement for your soul and healing journey. And cool. So I had this vision of having a community of people who enjoyed getting out in nature and just working through the challenges of life, because that's how I made it through. And so I've developed a pathway of sorts based off of what my own counselor told me as I showed up, just a wreck of tears. As my life, I give the image of falling into a pit or into a canyon, kind of as what grief feels like. And so, you're trying to claw your way up the hill after you kind of realize where you are and everything's falling on you. And you just get battered and bruised by the whole experience. And so asking my counselor, I was like, how am I even going to survive this?
Yes.
What can I do that's going to help me get through this, let alone even get better, right? So so she drew out 3 little circles and labeled them physical, emotional, and spiritual. And then she explained to me, you're going to do one thing in each one of these categories every day, and you're going to be okay.
Okay.
I was like, all right. So in that, I had found Revelation Wellness within this season of grief that I had already been active a little bit with. And so I just said, okay, well then, my Revelation Wellness fits into my physical category, and being able to listen to podcasts that encourage me spiritually, emotionally, and get me out moving my body.
Okay.
And so I use those a lot, and I encourage people even today to use those tools and resources to get out there and care for our bodies and to, use the resources that are already there that people
Mm.
are putting their whole lives and ministries into serving others, and we can benefit from each other. And I love that about my Revelation Wellness community.
Yes,
So yeah, so right before the pandemic, I kind of had this vision going already, and then all of a sudden, our world stopped.
it did.
And I decided to just put it on Facebook and try it out in a couple of different hiking communities. Hey, I'm going to be out on the trail at our local park that has some hills.
Mm.
And, I'm going to be out there for my own mental and physical health. And if you
Okay.
want to come and join me, and strangely enough, people showed up.
Now, where are you in the world that people
So
would
I'm in the
go?
Bakersfield, California area.
Okay.
So we're in the large Central Valley. We have the Sierra Nevada mountains real
Okay.
close,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, our area is mostly crops and farmland.
I see. So I'm just baffled by the idea that around the time of the pandemic, you offer people an opportunity to come join you physically for I don't know, a mental health hike. It sounds like,
Yeah,
or that they
yeah,
could have taken it that way. That
yeah,
wasn't
yeah. That's
necessarily
at that point, it was very much about mental health,
and so they
because
show up.
yeah, they showed up,
And what'd you do?
and some of them wore their masks, but many didn't. We were outdoors and we felt comfortable enough to be walking and talking and sharing our journeys. And yeah, some of those people that started with me out back then have now started their own hiking groups. Back then, there was only really one local hiking group, and
Mm,
um, it wasn't always welcoming to newbies.
sure, sure.
So back in 2018 is when I hiked the Grand Canyon with Revelation Wellness. And so I
Okay.
did the Rim to Him hike, which is an intense season of training.
Yeah.
And in the middle of that, I was walking my own season of grief and very, very much felt connected to that canyon.
Mm,
And so yeah, so in my training and trying to find groups that were out there, helping people um, learn about hiking and get connected and stuff. Yeah, I got left behind a couple of times because I couldn't keep up
oh man.
and didn't get a lot of encouragement, saying you're never going to make it across the canyon at this pace. And I just had to tell myself, I'm going to make it across the canyon just like everybody else, one step at a time.
Just me and God. It's just me.
Yeah, just one step at a time. That's how everybody's going to make it across,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
And Revelation Wellness was super, super encouraging, and all the instructors and guides were just what my soul needed. And so
Mm,
I felt very connected to that. And that's what I wanted to offer people as the pandemic and all the things, we all have our own seasons of life and challenges. And, so many people show up, they've just become divorced, or they have aging parents who've moved in and they're caring for them, special
yes.
needs children, and they just need that space, that's something for themselves to kind of pour into. And if they're willing to try hiking, it's really fun to get to connect and lead them through you know
Mm,
the growth.
yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for the origin story there. And I'd like to talk about what you guys are up to at the moment and what
Yeah,
the next steps in the journey of Fresh Journey is. But I'm very interested in a couple things here. One of the first things I'm interested in is I read a lot of literature in the exercise science community, and I read a lot of literature in the psychology community. And it's not like you can pull, like you can cherry pick some research sources on this subject, but it's not like a screaming billboard somewhere that hiking is a
yeah,
very powerful methodology for actually taking steps through, and I don't mean that as a dad joke because it could be, but actually taking steps through trauma processing and grief. And I know that in my own personal journey. I've learned that in the journeys of many of my clients. Sounds like you have also learned that in your personal journey and working with groups and whatnot. What do you think, and maybe this might tie to your own personal experience with walking through grief. What do you think it is about hiking that makes it so powerful in the process of working through grief?
Well, so a couple of my own thoughts.
Yeah.
Um, in that the trail, right, it leads you to someplace,
Hmm.
right? So there is a pathway through. And often when we're dropped into grief, we don't see the path. We can't we
That's so
can't
true.
see that this is even, a good part of a story, let alone, something we want to walk. And so, in following a trail, you learn there are markers, there are, resources there at each step. You've got a watering hole, you've got a bathroom break, you need to stop and fuel, so
Got
there's
a
these,
bench, yeah.
there are these markers that we can kind of um, travel through, and doing it repeatedly, right? Kind of tells your brain to calm down.
Mm-hmm.
That you're gonna get through this, that there is an end to this, and in doing the hard things, right? Training for the Grand Canyon in the middle of processing a very life disrupting event with my children
Hmm.
was quite frankly exhausting
Yes.
and life-giving, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So how do you train for a marathon, right? You can't do it without training for a marathon. That's a
Wearing
big
yourself out.
commitment to cross a Grand Canyon. And so it involved me making an investment in my time and energy, and
Mm.
doing hard things that would build my ability to physically and both mentally, ascend out of that canyon,
Hmm.
and to do so, at my own pace, right?
I like the picture
Go
of
through
grief
We're
kind
all
of.
going to go through grief at our own pace, and it's,
Mm.
you know the trails are similar, but they're never all identical. So
Right. Well,
yeah.
I like that picture of grief, by the way, being in the Grand Canyon, because like grief is definitely not like your normal functioning level. It feels a
Right.
lot like being in the pit. I
Yeah.
think the psalmist says the pit a lot, or the valley of the shadow of death, as Psalms
Right.
23 says. Like
Right.
this very terrible place. But it's cool on that ascension front. I read a very powerful book on the science of grief, and I just pulled it up here because I was
Okay.
interested. Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor wrote a
Hmm.
book called The Grieving Brain, but she described it this way because I actually read this book because we lost my wife's father just a couple of years ago, and I was as a man trying to lead my 4-year-old and my 7-year-old through a grieving process well, and I couldn't tell you that I knew how to grieve well.
Right.
Like I had
Right.
wrestled with my own grief in life, but I was an adult, and I was adulting, and I wasn't doing it great, but I was doing my best. And
Right.
but she describes it this way because when we think about the science of grief, it's like what's actually happening up here. And what we've learned in neuroscience is that there's a portion of our brain that when we have a loved one or a situation that we're comfortable and confident with, and that goes away. There's a portion of our brain that sees that as lasting as forever. So I have a loved one and I can't imagine them not being there. I don't know what that's like. So that it's called permanence. I have permanence in my mind of that individual. But in grief, what happens is there's another part of my brain that understands they're gone. And so I have permanence and they're gone. And those two parts of my brain don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
they, they,
Yeah.
they don't naturally communicate. And so you can have this was the case in losing my wife's father, the boy's grandfather. The widow, our my mother-in-law, the boy's grandmother,
Yeah.
she would go to the grocery store and she would grab his favorite things and put them in the cart and then break down crying a couple aisles over when she realized she was not bringing these home to him because he's not there, right?
Yeah.
Because the part of the brain that's like, oh, every time I've ever gone grocery shopping for the last 40 years, I grab this thing because this is his thing that he loves. And
Yeah.
and then 2 aisles over, the part of the brain that's like, he's not at home when you get there. And they're like, dealing with each other. And the
Right.
scientific way that you manage that is you break down crying. That's the physiological response in
Yeah.
that moment when those two parts of the brain aren't speaking together. But one of the things she finds in this particular trek through the grief work is that exercise is actually way more beneficial when those two parts of the brain are fighting with each other than crumpling into a ball and crying. Not to say that if you crumple into a ball and cry, you're wrong, but
Right.
that there is something about movement that
Yeah.
helps you battle through that process in a way that those parts of your brain can start to talk, that they can actually communicate in a way that doesn't devastate you. Now, as
Yeah.
I'm speaking, I imagine there's some things coming to your mind when it comes to your own story and maybe the story of your clients. Do you care to add or share?
No, actually, I'm finding that fascinating because I can understand that experientially, and I do know that journaling equally kind of connects those two disconnected parts.
Yes.
And so I do have a journal prompt that I developed and pretty much have used daily for the last 10 years. Um,
Would you
that
mind sharing that? I would love to hear it.
Yeah, yeah. So I've got that in the link that I sent you.
Okay.
So yeah. But that my counselor helped explain to me that as we process, and especially handwriting, she said,
Mhm.
kind of like releases things from our brain and then allows us to like take a more stepped back look at them,
Mhm.
right? So you
Mhm.
actually see them written on the page and you're able to now take your emotional brain and your rational brain and to kind of evaluate is that really the choice I want to make?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because a lot of times what we want to do or what we feel instantly is the right fix isn't going to work, right?
Yes. Right.
And so and my journals are messy. I tell people you wouldn't think that I'm this nice person if you looked at my journal because I have crazy ideas, folks.
Right. And
But I've
you're not
learned
alone
that
there.
I can't act on all of them, right? So
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the thing, right? If you have chatter on two sides of your brain, you're trying to put them together. You as a cohesive individual is the product of putting those things together. But if and I mean I would hazard to
yeah,
say anybody listening or watching
yeah,
this, if you could be in your brain, not just yours, mine and any of the
right,
listeners,
right.
they go, I don't know if anybody needs to be up there. It'd be a very confusing place.
Yeah. So I tell my kids, all the time, I'm like, you might have thoughts and ideas on things you want to do or need to do in this moment, but take a minute,
Mm.
step back. Is that really the direction we want to go with our lives?
Right. So coming back to this picture of hiking, you mentioned several
Yeah.
things in there. The path, like knowing there's a path that I can go at my own pace, right? Two things came to mind while you were speaking that I think are true of my experience too. One of the things in hiking is that it's what's cool is it's a physical manifestation of the reality. There's no way out but to keep going. Like like if you're hiking out in the middle of nowhere and you can't even and you just sit down, like I mean short of getting a GPS signal out to 911, like there's no
Yeah.
way out. Like you
Yeah.
have to keep going. And grief's a lot like that. Like
Yeah.
you can go at your own pace. There are many paths through. It's not easy, but the only way out is to put one foot in front of the other, really.
Yeah.
Like that's the
Yeah.
only way grief processes forward. So I like that about hiking as on that front. And I think finally what I love about hiking in relationship to the grief aspect is there are oftentimes in hiking, I don't know how this feels for you, there are oftentimes in hiking where I'm following the path, I'm following the path, I'm following the path, but then I stop and I look up and I just appreciate the beauty of what's around me and I appreciate the moment. I check in with my breath. I love the feeling of being out here. I love the smells. I love the sounds. There's a waterfall, there's a mountaintop, there's a snake, there's stuff. And grief's like that too. Like there's the process of putting the one foot in front of the other, there's the climb, there's difficult things to manage and stuff, but sometimes you stop and appreciate the beauty of maybe the memories you had or the beauty of how far you've come, or just the beauty of the moment. I feel like hiking kind of correlates to that too. Is there anything you
Definitely.
would add to that picture?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think I've noticed for myself, and even as I've taken other people out onto trails, the Lord speaks to us each in our own way.
Mm.
And one time we were on a trail and a little bird was just like jumping ahead of us. He didn't fly away, right? He wanted to stay like within that trail area,
Mm.
but he just kind of jumped around. And I asked the crew, I was like, hey, is anybody, is that bird speaking to anybody? Is there something that you're getting out of this experience? And so several people were just like, yeah, I feel like, the bird's not scared of us, but it's not, you know it's also not like wanting to be right next to us. So
Mm.
I feel like God connects things in our minds. Butterflies have done the same thing for many people.
Mm.
And, just being able to get out and witness and see the power of water, right?
Mm.
The erosion, the coolness, the refreshing, all the things that water can be damaging, and yet we have to have it for life, right?
Mm.
So it's a tremendous, I feel like God just gives us metaphors out in nature all the time,
All
right?
the time. All the time.
People write about the sequoias and how they're interconnected, and that's the only way they can grow to their massive sizes, and
Mm.
yeah, all the different biomes and things like that. That sounds like you've done a lot more research into than I have, but
It's a occupational
very
hazard.
cool. Yeah, very cool. I love it, and experientially, yeah, that's definitely um, been my experience in taking people out and for my own self.
But as a Christian, it also brings me nearer to the heart of Christ. He when he spoke, many of his parables are related to nature in some form or fashion,
Right.
and it's hard to be out hiking. If you've spent some time in scriptures, it's hard to be out hiking and not see it mirrored. Like you could hang out with Moses on a mountain. You can see the mustard seed tree that started from this tiny little thing,
Right.
and then you're like, oh my gosh, faith is that way. I remember we have a wonderful state park relatively near to our house. It's this little gym. It's so weird. The locals don't
Yeah.
come here. I don't
Right.
understand it.
Right.
But there are people from all over the place that come here. I meet more out of state people than locals, but when I'm
Yeah.
hiking, but I hike there and I pray there often. And I remember coming by this waterfall over and over and over again, and I was fixated on this tree. I didn't know why.
Yeah.
I would sit there
Yeah.
and I'd like consider, and I'm not that guy. I'm not,
Yeah.
no offense to the tree huggers out there, but I'm not that guy. Like, I'm not like, oh, this is such a beautiful tree. I'm not that guy. But I'm fixated on this tree and I couldn't figure out why. So I sat there and I followed the trunk down, and it was rooted in a rock. And for
Yeah.
some reason, for me, that just was such a deep metaphor for being rooted in the things that last, that matter. And it was sitting on top of a waterfall. So like it had a hard life. Like, how do you grow in a rock at the top of a waterfall? You're constantly being beaten. You're constantly being hit by the waves and the power of this thing. It's not like you have soil around, but here you
Yeah.
are. And so I spent a lot of time praying at this tree.
Yeah.
And that might sound weird to anybody who hasn't spent much time in nature praying through difficult things, but God really does, I believe, minister to our souls through the natural. So I wanted to ask, Fresh Journey started, what, 5-6 years ago?
Yeah.
Fast forward to today, how are things going? What kind of presence do you guys have in your community, and how do you feel the mission's progressing?
Yeah. So I want to say I love the better daily 1% kind of
Mm.
thing. Like when the Lord spoke to my heart to do this, it was like, well, how many people am I going to make the difference to? And I said, well, even if it's 1%,
Mm.
even if it's 1% of the people in my community that this makes a difference for, then that's good for me. And I mean, probably I've hiked with thousands of people over
Wow.
the last few years, because some will come once and some will, come for years.
Hmm.
So in that season, so many of those people who stayed with me throughout the pandemic, and then the following years, as we've all come out into a new season and figuring out what it is we want to do with our lives. And and a lot of the people had didn't done their own healing and, walked through their journeys. And now they wanted to offer something similar to what they got when they were walking with me. So it's really cool that there's sprung up out of this ministry. There's been another group called Soul Adventurers, and they tend to take on more of the trail running aspect.
Okay.
And they love Spartan races and things like that. I'm not that adventurous. I'm really afraid of like tearing my ACL and being down for the rest of my life. So
So we'll stick with hiking.
so I'm good with just, one foot in front of the other, not climbing over crazy things or mud.
That's awesome.
And then there's another group that has more younger children in their sphere. And so they've taken on the Little Hikers of Bakersfield.
Oh,
and so it's a bunch of moms who get together and their kids get out. And it's so wonderful to watch. So wonderful to watch, and just to kind of be the parent of these different these different groups, and just encouraging them to go out and to, make it a safe place where people can get out, learn about nature, how to get out there safely, and to get their families out there, and to encourage their friends to come join them, even if it's not for the benefit of grieving or moving through something hard, right? Just to do something outdoors, and all the benefits of that, walking and all those sciencey things. Yeah. So there's been several groups that have sprung up out of this. And so in the last year, it's kind of like, I feel like I've transitioned into where there's groups here now. People will find places that they are able to connect and get outdoors if they wanted to. Whereas, pre-pandemic, there wasn't a lot out there and your options were very limited. And so that's really exciting. And so I feel like the Lord's kind of pulling me back now into, I'm very confident that I can physically train people because I've done it for enough years now. And so I'm moving more into the actual grief, maybe science or coaching kind of realm. And so I have written a curriculum called Hiking to Explore Grief, and I've had my first book study group this summer going through that, which is super fun.
That's awesome.
And I've partnered with a ministry called Wild Haven Sanctuary, and they're actually out in North Carolina. And so there's a group out there. It's been online. And so we've had people from the East Coast, from the Central, and out here with me in Bakersfield. And so next weekend, we're taking our celebration hike that we've been training for in our grief process, and understanding what are those trail markers of things that you would be looking for in grief to kind of show that you're moving on to the next season. You walked through that section.
That's awesome.
And so kind of going through that. And then the book is in the process of being published, or workbook more is what it's, more than a book. It's more of a workbook.
Yeah,
and
how to, it sounds like.
Yeah, and gives a lot of practices, because you really have to do this experientially, right? And most of us aren't taught how to grieve, right? That's not something our culture embraces, or that we're taught even in the church, even though there's so much grief in life. And so we haven't been taught that well, and we don't know what to expect. And once you kind of learn that process, hard as it is to accept, right? Then when new waves come, you kind of have the faith that you're going to move through this okay. And that's, as the seasons of life continue to sometimes overwhelm and send the tidal wave, you understand, yes, there's devastation, that's no more. Now, where are we going to go through, and how are we going to get through this? And so for my own self, that's been, part of the journey, is that I've had to deal with so many tidal waves.
Yes. Yeah. I oftentimes, so my wife's a dietitian. And I, 20 years ago, I became a personal trainer, and I've been working through the health coaching process and all that. And so my children live with a master level trainer and a registered dietitian. And so I tell them a lot, in our line of work, you're learning this intensely practical stuff that most people don't know how to do, but you get to just take it for granted that every single day you know how to get enough protein, you know how to exercise, you know what these benefits are, and you know that if you don't, you're going to pay for it, you know, like all those things.
Yeah.
And understanding grief and how to move through that is very similar, because it's not like I pray that nobody has to grieve every day, but
Right.
it is inevitable. Just like having to eat is inevitable, it is inevitable that you will wrestle with grief in your life. And if you don't know how, it's
Yeah.
gonna shellac you. And if you do know how, it'll probably still shellac you, but at least you'll know what's happening and how to get
Right. How
less
to tread the
shellacked.
water.
Yeah, right. How to tread water, right? Yeah, that's well said. And so I'm just so grateful for what you're doing in the world. Bless you for that. I had a thought that I wanted to share, because grief is like grief is this thing that if you don't know how to handle it, or you've never been through it yourself, or you have been through it but you're not dealing with it. You're like, it's there but it's not there. You know what I'm saying? Like you're breaking down in the grocery store a lot. I'm not laughing at you. That really
Yeah,
stinks.
no.
But you know, it's just a regular thing in your life. You haven't worked through it. It's just there. If our world generally likes to take something that difficult, even in the church, and turn the other way, like act like it's not there. I don't want it to be there, and that's not biblical. There's the Apostle Paul says we do not grieve as the rest of the world grieves. That doesn't mean we don't grieve. That means that we have a hope as Christians. We have a hope in the faith that we can grieve with. That this is this thing that makes it a powerful and good process, even though it's painful. But what I love about my faith as a Christian, what I love about the Christian faith is at the center of everything. It's right behind me, on the right there. At the center of everything is this symbol of grief and difficulty. It also becomes a symbol of redemption. But the symbol of the cross is grief and difficulty. Every year, if you celebrate Good Friday and Easter, you get like, hey, here's an innocent man beaten, bruised, and tortured for the sins of the whole world. His friends have abandoned him. He's been wrongfully accused. He's done nothing but help everybody around him, and there he is, bleeding to death and dying on a cross, right? And look at it. Like, and grief is kind of like that. Like, if you're going to wrestle through grief, you can't do it by saying, I'm not grieving, it's not affecting me, everything's fine, and I'm okay. Like, nah. It's like, hey, I am going to go for a hike because I'm not okay, and I'm going to go face this in a way that honors it, in a way that doesn't try to shy away from it. And I'm gonna journal about it. I'm gonna write about the things that are hard to say. I'm gonna write about the things that are difficult to even think and feel, right? And well, what I love about what you're approaching here and what you're doing in your world is you're saying, hey, it's okay. It's okay to be grieving, but we're not gonna not do anything about it. We're gonna come together and we're gonna walk through the difficulty. And I'm sure, I don't know if you have a guarantee with your hikes, but it's like, hey, you will survive this. Like, you'll be okay. We'll make sure you make it.
We do. Yes, we do. And even in pointing to the cross, right? The prediction was that this was a man of sorrows, a man who would understand. And I'm pretty sure it's in Hebrews where it says he's experienced the grief of our life. He knows what it's like. And so my favorite image of the Lord is the Emmanuel. He is with us. And as he left this earth, he promised, I will be with you. And so it's lovely that even, through all the trials of life, he is with us. And a lot of times without these trials, we wouldn't turn to him, right? We would think we have life on our own. And so, yeah, that's equally an experience that, my family's had to walk through. And my husband really, in some of our challenges, he's like, I need Jesus now. I need him.
Yes.
And before you could kind of handle your life on your own, but now life is different. And and so it's a tool, and the Lord ministers through it, right? Not that he causes it or that anything like that, but we know that he's with us and he is good, and it's good to be with him.
Well, and would that we turn to him without having to experience pain and difficulty, but glory to him that in pain and difficulty he's there.
Yes.
And
my papa, so it's my wife's grandfather. So he's a Southern
Okay.
Baptist preacher. He passed 3 years ago. And I remember him telling me one time over breakfast, he said that he never ministered better than when he was doing a funeral. So like he would go to a funeral and he would speak, the eulogy, he would take time to minister to the family and stuff. But he said that he always made sure, as weird as it might sound, that there was an altar call in the funeral because what he said is that our hearts are never more raw and open to God in our life than in the moments when we understand we're not going to be okay by ourselves. And even the hardest heart, if you lose somebody that you love, even the hardest heart is like, where's God right now? Like I need him. And there, if God did not intervene, if God did not love, if he didn't care, if he didn't step into that, then we would just be lost and alone in that
Right.
situation.
Yeah.
Which is so wonderful that he's faithful to do that, even if we were hard-hearted prior. So at Papa's funeral, I remember saying, Papa would come down from heaven and slap me in the face if I did not give an altar call. And he wasn't that kind of guy, but
Right,
it made the room laugh. And 3 people came to Christ in that and I'm not much of a preacher myself, but 3 people came to Christ because of what he taught me and told me at that time, because he meant something to somebody enough that without him, there was somebody in the room who was like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this man's loss without God in my life. So anyway, thank you for the ministry that you do. I'd like to transition and talk a bit more about one of the tenets of what you're working with, and that's an acronym called CORE. Can you walk us through that? I liked your acronym for FRESH. That was cool. It was freedom. I had to write it down. Freedom, rest, encouragement, and
Soul healing.
Soul healing. Okay.
Yeah.
But what is CORE? What does that have to do with Fresh Journey?
Yeah, so there is a great counselor in the Christian world named Leslie Vernick,
Okay.
and I've spent years under her coaching and ministry. She deals with a lot of spiritual abuse situations and times when maybe churches don't recognize a lot of women's suffering in their marriages, and so she offers a lot of tools. And so I've kind of combined what I've learned with Revelation Wellness and the core strength ability of our bodies physically, and how important that is to keeping us upright and our intestines even working right and things like that. That our core is super important. And so Leslie Vernick's teaching of core, the C is completely honest with yourself, with God, and with others. And so this may not be word for word what she teaches, but this is how I've
That's fair. That's fair. It's
adapted
coming
now.
from you. Maybe she can come on and argue with us later.
Right, yeah. I'm like, maybe that's not exactly what she says. But a lot of times, as I'm doing a core workout or leading some groups in some core strength, even on the trail, we try to find our core and and do stuff like that when the trail's boring. So a lot of that I'll be talking about, this is how we do core in life, is being completely honest with ourselves, God, and others. And I use the journal as part of that teaching. That a lot of, in my own experience, I was a very shut down emotionally person when I started every group that I had to start going to for my own healing. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know that I was allowed to feel. I didn't know any of these things, and was just kind of a hollow shell of a person, it felt like. And so being completely honest with myself kind of had to be like the first trauma almost. As I wrote down this really happened. This really happened, and I have to accept that as part of my story and be completely honest with myself. And then I can take it to God, right? Because I can't even ask for healing if I don't know what I'm asking for healing for,
Right.
from. And so, being completely honest with myself, taking it to the Lord, and then being able to bring it into community and to recognize a lot of times we feel so alone when we've been through something hard. And yet once we start sharing, we realize, oh my gosh, all these people have been through this too.
Mm.
There's nothing wrong with them. Why, because we have a lot of self-talk that there's something wrong with us. That's why this happened to us. And then we find out this is a more common occurrence than we would have ever believed. And so that C is the beginning steps of taking into developing that core strength that's going to get you through life, just like your own core.
Okay.
And then the O is open to the Holy Spirit and other people who are wiser than you. So that's where your counselors, your pastors, and then, just good friends that maybe have walked through hard things or are willing to walk with you. And that's another thing to grieve sometimes in these hard things, that, sometimes you lose friends. Sometimes, they don't agree with what's happened in your life, or they want to argue, or, even in the case of spiritual abuse, right? They're like trying to wrestle their own emotions about this situation or this person. And so we lose some people in our walks. And so trying to find that community, trying to really anchor into the Lord. And, he promised he would send us a counselor, and more times I've seen and experienced enough people really anchoring into the Lord to find, they're like, oh my gosh, he really is the counselor. He will help me. He will guide me in. My sister walked through a season, and she explained to me how the Lord was giving her the shield of faith to stop the fiery darts, and I was just like, so good, so awesome. Good. And then the next one is R, and that's responsible for your own self, your own behaviors. And again, the journaling prompt does a lot for this core strength ability in being able to be personally responsible, which is one of my, like the things that's really anchored deep in my soul, is that I'm only responsible for myself, right? I'm not responsible for the outcomes. I'm responsible to be faithful and to do my own work. And then the Lord will have to do his work in other people in his time and at their pace, right? And that's not my pace, really. It's never fast enough.
Right.
And so being responsible for yourself and looking into what it is as you're journaling, what is it you want to do? And is that really what you want to do? And, make a prayer and to decide what it is. Yeah, I feel like I could do this, but maybe that's not the direction I want to go. I want to go this way. And to be able to take responsibility for a lot of that. And then, but not the outcome, right? That's God's. And E is empathetic. And I think as Christians, this is where we get to apply the gospel. So empathy does not mean I'm going to enable someone else's bad behavior, but I can understand that they're acting out their bad behavior based on their own feelings, emotions, experiences in life. It's not necessarily a reflection on me, right? But I can apply the gospel and say, hey, you know what? They need Jesus in this. And I can share if I'm inspired by the Lord to share, hey, you know what? I've been through a season that's been really hard. And, the Lord has met me there. And if you're willing, he will meet you too. So, a lot of times it's, do you want the Lord to meet you in this walk? And so empathy in understanding, right? But it doesn't mean we're going to enable bad behavior. And that's Leslie Vernick's, a lot of her ministry is in that empathy, real fine line, right? Empathy versus enabling, and especially with marriages that are real controlling and things like that, she talks about leaving well or staying well. So how do you do that as a wife in a devastating kind of situation? And so in my own marriage, I was called to stay well. And so in having to walk through that journey, learning how to stay well, this little 3 little circles that my counselor drew was how I got through it,
Mm.
and so I've kind of adopted that into the fresh journey and how to help other people to get through
Mhm.
that, in that caring for your body, your mind, and your spirit every day, and moving through that, because as adults, we've got lots of things to do.
Yeah. Yes,
Not
we
like we
do.
can just sit down and heal all day. So
No
how is it going
joke.
to happen? It's going to happen in a 15-minute workout. It's going to happen in reading your Bible or listening to it like I do on my drive to work.
Hmm.
Like, how are you going to do that? You're going to have to be intentional.
Hmm.
And you have to, I call it practices, you just simply have to practice,
Hmm.
right? And in doing so, every day it builds, there's that staircase little drawing, and usually the guy's way up there and you're like, how am I going to get there? We'll make the steps smaller,
One
so
1% every day.
yeah, 1% every day. Love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't have that benefit of all that time, but we have to do the work. We're responsible for it
Hmm.
to get better and to move in that direction, and the Lord will meet us as we do it.
So core is uh wait, almost had it. It's honesty, complete
Hmm.
honesty. There we go. Okay,
Yeah.
complete honesty, openness, and then we have responsibility and empathy, and those are all reflected in. You said you sent me a link that I'll make sure is in the show notes. Those tenets are reflected throughout that journal entry.
Journal prompt.
Correct?
Yeah. Hmm.
Awesome. So I'm going to invite the listeners right now. If what Jennifer just said resonates with you and you're like, hey, I need to move forward in this, you can start with this journaling prompt. The link's in the show notes. You need to grab that and get started on it. I'm going to tie up our conversation in just a second, but I'm going to pray over you. But I also want to do a quick kind of fun lightning round of kind of random questions, but not really random. Like I thought of them ahead of time, so they're not that random. Although my brain's a little
Yeah.
strange. So I got to know. You're hiking on this trail with a bunch of strangers. I mean, they're not strangers by the end of it, probably, which is great.
Right. Right.
But you're hiking on this trail with a bunch of strangers, and you want a snack. What's your favorite trail snack, Jennifer?
I love an apple.
Perfect. Very portable. No muss,
Yes.
no fuss, and you can throw the core back into the woods, right?
But we don't leave a trace.
But we don't leave it. So you don't throw your core. You keep your core.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well,
Pack it in, pack it out. Yeah, the
oh, that's sweet.
animals will find that and become more accustomed to our.
Dependent. Okay. Well, here
Yeah.
in Arkansas, the animals will find it, and then they'll probably be lunch but come hunting season. I don't know how it is where you are. But, okay, noted. Okay, so apple, love it. Now, I love worship music when I hike by myself specifically. If I'm going to hike with somebody else, it's usually a conversation. But if you go for a hike by yourself, are you listening to music? And if so, what kind of music do you like?
So I typically don't listen to music when I hike. I listen to music out on my daily walks, things
Okay.
like that.
Yeah.
And I Am They is one of my favorite bands.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah.
They're good. Cool. So if somebody wanted to start a hiking group and they've heard what you said and maybe they've wrestled through their own grief or maybe they are currently wrestling through their own grief, you've learned a thing or two putting together hiking groups. What would you recommend to them? It sounds like you wrote a workbook that would be really helpful to them when it comes out. What would you recommend to them?
I would recommend in looking around for a hiking group that is in your area already. That way, if you're not familiar with the outdoors, it is good to have people who've been out there a time or two
Mhm.
to kind of help you out and teach you, some of the natural wildlife that your area has. I wouldn't know a copperhead from a from a cottonmouth.
Good point.
So I wouldn't be very good on your trails. But but I do know what a rattlesnake looks like versus a king snake and things like
Mm.
that. So having somebody to kind of walk with you through just trail safety, things like that, and then who are more familiar with your area and the challenges that each
Mhm.
area comes with. So and finding people, and a lot of times you can connect with somebody in those. So I often say look on Facebook, or there's an app called Meet Up. And there's a lot of times people will have hiking groups in there, and that at least gets you a little connected into that hiking world. And then maybe there will be somebody that would want to join up with you more frequently, or that you really connect with and feel like you can go on the trail safely with, which is what I love. And then, yeah, if you're feeling called to start a hiking group, I'll help you.
Yeah, awesome.
So that's part of what I love, is just getting people together and being able to find that camaraderie and take a journey together. And, sometimes you got to backtrack and find the way together, but that's all the more part of the story.
I love it. So you're hiking and you come across a cold waterfall. Do you get in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
That's so funny. That's a rule. That's a rule in my own head. I come across a cold, I have to get it. I can't not. It doesn't matter what the temperature is. I just got to go.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that makes me really happy.
I did the Camino Santiago last summer.
Okay.
And there's quite a few places where the trail is, and I'm just like, every time at lunch, if there's a creek there, I'm gonna put my feet in.
Gotta get in. I gotta get in. Okay, well, knock a bump. I didn't know if we could be friends, but now we can be friends. Sweet. Well, Jennifer, I sincerely appreciate this conversation. I know there's a lot more that could be said about grief. We might have to have you back as you publish your book and whatnot, so that we can talk through some more. But I really love to close this conversation by praying over you and your ministry and those listening who are wrestling with grief, if you would join me.
Sure.
Father God, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for the opportunity to spend time with my sister Jennifer, and for the ministry that you've led her in through her own very painful road, Lord, that you met her, that you brought healing and grace. And thank you for the way that she's pouring that out to others, planting seeds that are turning into other groups who are connecting families or taking on adventurous, high energy, ACL risking challenges. And thank you, Lord, that you've called her to an area that many people need and want. So Lord, I just pray for those who are listening and watching who have wrestled with grief. God, I pray that you'll meet them in that grief, and that you'll bring healing to their heart and their life, so that not only can they serve others, but that they can be close to you and find joy in you again. And I also pray for those who haven't wrestled through their grief. Either they haven't had the event yet, or are avoiding it. Lord, I just pray that you help them to be honest. Help them to be honest with you. Help them be honest with themselves, Lord. And I pray that you'll give a hunger to them right now to find that healing, to pursue that, to be willing to step out, to get out in the woods and spend time with you, and just open their heart and being honest with themselves and with the pain that they're wrestling with, Lord. And I pray that your redemption and your healing come quickly for them, in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you so much for the time today, Miss Jennifer. I sincerely appreciate it. And to our listeners, you guys know how I'm going to end this. This has been Coach Alex Van Houten on the Faithful Fitness Podcast. Until next time, train hard, but pray harder.
Hey, if this episode helped you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a raving review so more people can find Faithful Fitness. Oh, and my dad's new devotional is almost out now. You can grab a copy for yourself and then join our free community at Better Daily by clicking on the links in the show notes below. We all have a cross to carry, but it's lighter when we do it together. So check out both links in the show notes. Don't be a big Mo Bob, just do it. Until next time, don't forget, train hard and pray even harder.